There you go.
Excuse me. All right. So it is Saturday, February 5th, 8 a.m. We have a work session to bring to order. In attendance, we have Mayor Hughes, myself, Council President Wolf, Councilpersons Shrestha, Cost, McNamara, Camera, and Bruger. We have our village attorney on Jesse Shamp. And I think that's all we got in attendance at the moment. So why don't we go through this thusly, since I believe all the committees met this month. We can kind of go through, people can speak to what their committees have been up to, and then talk through any legislation, and then old business, new business. So from the top of the hum, the first committee I see here is communication. So Councilperson Shrestha.
Okay, so we just met last night, guys. I'm sorry about my voice. I swear I'm losing it. It's insane. So there was just a couple things that I brought up to you guys. It was, revisiting our community forum, that Coffee with Council. Can we do this every 3 months? Is it something that we should do? And, in the past, why didn't it work? Just to kind of get an overall feel. I think it's a good way to have an informal, again, I don't think it should be a mandatory thing for every council person, whoever can make it that time. Again, every 90 days, let the residents choose the topics, just informal. So that was one of the first things that we spoke about, as well as the virtual green card. Councilperson Cost brought up that there was people commenting on our social media. And I was spending some time trying to think about what that would look like. How can, we talked about Barb being a moderator, should we just list all the emails right before we go live and say, please direct your question to this, please allow 48 hours for a response to your question. So maybe it's not going to be during that, or if it is, what does that look like, and how do we do a time limit? I'm kind of gonna look what other counties and stuff are doing. On that note, other counties and stuff, subcommittee reports after our sessions. I know some of you guys are not in favor for that. Just sending them over to the website. Barb says it's not an issue to get those submitted, just like a rundown. I take notes during the meetings. I mean, it's nothing to send an extra email. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, as well as software that was brought into council a couple years ago by councilperson Diane Shrimp, just an email alert. And then I did get an old survey done in 2018. I would really like to talk to you guys about possibly doing this next year, 2023. It does say that 77% of all of our residents prefer to have email alerts. Text is even under that, and we hear how much our residents love the text notifications. I think email is just one more way to kind of go in, and it's already set within the system. It's just got an operating cost of $600 a year. So I think it's just something to talk about. I don't know if everybody got that email of exactly what that is. I'm getting ready to go through the training and look at it in depth more to kind of understand it a little bit more. But those are the things that we talked about, as well as maybe going to Zoom for live. So I need to maybe look at Zoom limits, when we're talking about corporate accounts and stuff like that, even if we need a corporate account, that way the residents of the village that don't have Facebook have the ability to watch these meetings, be more active, and just let's reach our hands out as much as possible to all of our residents, cover as much as possible in the communication spectrum.
Okay, I know that's a lot in one thing, so I'm gonna throw a couple things and things that we'd come up with in the past, why some things may not work, why some things may work. I'm actually, for the record, the one that wanted the text blast and email blast as one of the first things we wanted to do. I was hoping we could find a company that could do both email and text blast at the same thing. You're talking about something totally different than what I wanted to do, because Diane kind of went with the website thing. What I don't like about doing the website thing is you have to opt in. People have to go in and opt into whatever they want. And if there's like a keyword or something like that, then it has to get sent out. Again, it's not about not sending it out, but then if you start putting things in there, then everybody starts getting 50 emails, because there's times we may upload 50 things, and then of course now they don't want it. So you got to be careful on doing that.
Yeah.
I am in favor of doing, if we can figure out a way to do an email. We researched plenty of places that every time she sends out, it's a level 2 snow emergency, that it would go to your
Sends an email.
Westerville City Schools does, so it does exist, because I get a phone call, an email, a text blast. I swear to God, I think they come and knock on my door. So there's, you know, there is a way to do it. That was ultimately the thing that I wanted to do, because of the street projects that we had. A road closed. I wouldn't, you know, it's kind of like we've been doing the text blast. We're not gonna send out a text blast that says, you know, the food truck's here tonight. I mean, that would get annoying for people. So you kind of want to make sure that you're not doing too much. I didn't like it joining up with the website, just because if it's a very important document and people really want to see it, but that one keyword that they're not connected to isn't in there, they're not going to get it. So I'm not opposed to it. The $600 I'm not opposed to, but the thing that I liked was trying to find a company that, and if one did a text blast, then you had to go through a secondary place to do another one. And then that just ends up being another thing that the administrator has to do. Our administrator is not as busy in the winter months, but in the summer months, when we start having pools and all of that, when we talk about green cards and virtual, I'm going to refer to Jesse on this, but you've got to watch what becomes a public record. You know, once you start using social media on all of these types of things, I'm not a huge person in favor of letting Barb do this, because now we start getting into budgetary issues and becoming full-time and becoming too many hours, because now we've got, so we've already, you know, and this is a new council. So I want everybody to decide what they want to do. But these are all things that we've talked about. And the reasons that they don't work at this point in time is we will need to hire another employee. These are all great. And communication and transparency has always been something we've talked about. But there is going to be not just a $600 cost. We have to think about who's going to do it. If you have a response time of telling people 48 hours, I'm out of the country, Jason's out of the country on vacation, you know, we can't just say, okay, it's 48 hours unless they're on vacation, call and check their personal cell to see if they're on vacation.
But could we do
be all in? That has nothing to do with me. I respond. I mean, I'm very good at responding and I'm like that, but we had a different group last time, and I don't know how everybody feels about setting a limit if they're on vacation, that they're checking their emails to respond to somebody that's upset about something that is huge to them, but you know, to the average person, they're not as concerned about. So
I think the virtual stuff, I mean, without getting into it too much, without having to worry about, you know, time, I think maybe listing the emails and saying, you know, give 48 to 70 hours. However, and at the end of the day, if we have a resident, you're on, you know, vacation, and that resident, I'm sorry, I was on vacation, because at the end of the day, I don't care what you do. You deserve to take your vacation, just like he deserved to take his.
Exactly.
Hi, Daria. Oh my gosh. So I don't know about adding it to the meeting, but what way can we do that and still put it on our residents to reach out?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Now, Jesse, one question for you. The back to virtual, has that, you and I got to meet, I don't know where that's at right now. So that was question number 1 on the virtual, like, are we allowed to go back? Are we not allowed to go back? Only because I don't know the answer.
Back to council meetings via virtual.
Until June.
Yes, sorry, couldn't catch up that. Yes, we can do that if we want.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I guess the thing that we were really talking about is, like, I think when we go virtual, or when we have like a virtual meeting, we're not accessible to the people that are also virtual. So I don't know how we can like circumvent that, or like make that accessible, because basically in order to ask a question, you have to show up to a council meeting like in person. So is there a way to like make that more accessible?
Hold on, I'd like to interject there, because that is absolutely not true, right? We are accessible through other means. It is not the only way that you can ask a question of council is by showing up to a council meeting, right? We are,
It
in
is.
fact, I would tell you that asking a question at a council meeting is while it's a great way to get your question on record, it's a lousy way to get an answer, right? Because if your question requires research, we're not going to have the opportunity to research and answer right then and there, right? If your question, using your citizens comment time to ask a question in the meeting, we would then be eating into your time to speak to council by answering your question, right? Asking a question and expecting an answer at the meeting, people are welcome to, because we won't control their speech, but in my opinion, it's a lousy way to expect an answer. So if we want to direct people to better ways to get answers, emailing council, and you can copy all of council, right? It is a public record, so it is on the record, right? And as are all of the responses, right? That is a far better way, in my opinion, to ask a question of council in the administration. Now, if you want an idea of how to do that better, we could, on our website, changing the language of the contact us button, right? And maybe some of the nuance of that form, right? If we change that from contact us to, or add a button that says ask us questions, right? And the form pops up and you could choose from a list, councilperson Cost, Streets Committee Chair, councilperson Shrestha, Communications Committee Chair, councilperson Wolf, Finance Chair, right? And you could tick, 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 or copy all, and away goes the question. And then you could actually ask a question, get an answer within as reasonable a time frame as we choose, and it's all on the record.
So then what's the point of the green card then? And why is it like?
Because the point of the green card was never about asking questions. The green card was about us inserting your relevant comment to the relevant point of the meeting, right? Citizens have a right to speak to council, right? And so the green card.
By that logic, why can't they speak to us through the internet too if we're going virtual?
There's
no way
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
They absolutely could, but that is a very, how do I want to say this kindly? A very dangerous slope. And what I mean by that is that people do not always use their best words on the internet, right? I would hate to go back and read through some of our comments because some of our residents have not always used their kindest language. I don't think it would be fair to represent people because we would have to use their name, right? We would have to read into the record, Joe Smith said awful thing about this council person.
I mean, it's not my job to protect people if they choose to use that language. My job is to listen to everybody that has a comment. So I'm not sure that I want to decide ahead of time that, hey, people aren't going to be kind to me, so therefore we're not going to do this.
No, it's not about being kind to me, because again, I am a public figure in that regard. It's about being kind to them, because I don't think that people, we would have to make it very, in my opinion, for it to be fair to these people, we would have to make it very clear to them that we will be reading into the public record whatever they put in there.
I think that's fine.
I don't know. That doesn't, it also doesn't sound like a very effective use of our time, right? Because, we could, one of the things I don't like about the way comments happen on Facebook Live is that you have to like watch the whole thing, it seems like, to see all the comments. But, reading a comment of, resident X said, here at this timestamp, that is not very useful.
Right, but these are also.
Isn't that what we're here for, though, is to listen to residents and find new ways to hear them?
Yeah, we're trying to make this village better.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. The amount of comments that we typically get are few and far between.
Right.
The amount of statements that people make are usually, what do you do when somebody puts a frowny face on there? Do you just say, so-and-so put a frowny face or somebody put an angry face? I feel like we're talking about something that is very not done very much. I mean, there are a couple questions, and Brian is 100% correct. 90% of the time when somebody asks a question, I don't have the answer right away. So then you almost look like a fool because you're being put on the spot, which that's what some people are trying to do. I mean, you don't want to, and then you don't want to give false information if you haven't done it. It's just not an effective way to do it. Anybody can sit behind a computer. And the other part is, if you are responding to the Village of Minerva Park, you don't even know if this is one of your residents. So there have been situations that people have made comments on our Facebook page or on a live stream that was a very touchy topic that was not one of our residents. And I do not believe that that should have been read into anything because it was false information and it was about one of our employees. So again, you're getting into a slippery slope that should not be discussed. Just because somebody has something to say on a social media page is not the place to put it in your public record, because it is a public page. It is.
I agree with that. And I'm trying to
Jesse.
get away from Facebook too. Like, that's the whole thing, is like, let's just make it a little bit more accessible, but let's make it a little more professional. Let's not make it a social media page. Sorry, they're screaming. But let's make this a Zoom thing. Let's make it like, hey, you have to say, the format of the question is you have to state your name, type your name out, type where you live, and then you can present your question just like you would fill out on a physical
But if they don't live in the village, are we required to read it into the record? I would still assume so.
But how do we
Yeah.
know that if somebody shows up to a public meeting and fills out a green card? What's the difference?
Yeah, anybody can show up to our public meeting and wait their turn at citizens' comments and speak their piece, right? So
Even
we
if they're not a
can,
resident, correct?
even if they're not a resident, right?
So-
There are ways to handle this, right? So one would be to change technologies from Facebook Live to something that allows more of a presenter mode, right? Where you can allow people in. Someone would have to be responsible for muting participants, right? And then, at the appropriate citizens comments time, people who want to make a comment, use whatever raise hand feature there is, the moderating person would introduce them, unmute them, and give them their time. Right? That is absolutely possible, but we would have to change technologies.
And
Yeah, and
Western City Schools.
It's
is
not a
perfect
face stream
example.
situation, like, and that's why I was asking for Jesse, because once we allow that in, we would have to read the stream of consciousness that would just come across the screen. Right, Jesse? I mean, we couldn't just filter then. We'd have to say emoji poo face, emoji. I mean, we'd have to go through all that silliness.
Why would we have to read emojis? And I
I'll
mean,
let-
if you
go
look
ahead,
at the
Jesse.
last 4 meetings, we've maybe had 3 comments.
Yeah,
But
but
a
we're not
live
talking
stream
about
means
50.
everybody comments is the problem. Everybody follows you. Everyone knows how that works. People start going through and they just go bang, 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 right? Controversial stuff just, or even non-controversial suddenly goes in crazy. And we've got to spend time reading all that in. We can't filter it. Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
We've got to do it
No,
all.
yeah, I see like two different things here. Facebook is
Yeah, I'm
not the method or avenue to do what we're suggesting. What
Yeah.
Councilperson Wolf just brought up is the way that other cities I know have done it, where it's, if they are meeting virtually, somebody sits in a room where they don't have access to talk unless a moderator does it. We do have to, on the Facebook side of things, we do have to read everything there that comes through if we made the decision to read anything in. The thing about Facebook is, obviously, whether we read it into the public meeting or not, we'll have the option to address comments or questions separately after the meeting. And those, our Facebook page is the public record, so that stuff stays there. The best way is probably the moderator. I don't know the cost of that. Facebook seems unwieldy, probably impossible.
Yeah.
Remember during election season when we had forums on Zoom, it had a link that was on like our residents page that could be accessed and they could contribute, and a moderator function existed. I think that that could be effectively used
Yeah.
because it's not like everybody in the world is going to be digging around on Minerva Park's Facebook page to find a Zoom link to enter. I think that might cut down on some of the fears of President Wolf. I mean, I am not opposed to councilperson Cost and Trust's idea. I love the idea of increased participation of the public. However, the reality for the past couple of years has been, barring the most controversial things, it has been pretty minimal. But that at the same time doesn't mean we should reduce.
I think
Or
we're
keep
so
reducing
worried
the
about that when we like talk about this, it just makes us look questionable. Like we're trying to like come up with ways to limit citizen access to us. And I just don't like that.
Yeah,
Facebook, I
can-
think is
I hear
so
that impression.
unprofessional. I want to get away from Facebook, period. That is not where you need to conduct official government business.
But that's where
Um,
people want to go. I mean, so by you saying that, that is exactly where, if you don't recall, half of your council people last time, not half, a couple, that's the number one place that they think we should be accessible. So just because we have an opinion, nobody's trying to get away from it. Everybody has an email address. My phone number is published everywhere. My personal phone number, my mayor's address, my everything is published everywhere. People like to go to social media to post certain things to get a rouse out of people. That's just what they do. Those 90% of those people will never step into a meeting and say the same thing that they would on Facebook.
Okay, so that's the whole
again,
thing.
we're not talking about the Facebook. So I am totally on board for the other options. And this is what I wanted to say. Westerville City Schools does something for, and obviously, you know, with the masks and all of that was going on, they had a huge, you know, a lot of people getting involved and wanting to be at their meetings. We're going to scream, you know, the whole thing. And they did it to where you had to submit a question of
Mhm.
any sort by X date and time. So it's like your green cards, except for it must be in by noon at this time if you want to ask a question, a comment, or anything. Now, somebody still goes through those because, again, Westerville City Schools, you've got 1,300 comments of the same thing. You're not going to read all of those in. So people got mad about that because not everybody's question or comment got read. So again, it's who's going to read these, who's going to do it, who's going to do all of that. And I'm just pointing that out because when you start talking about things, there have been things in the past. Yes, they are minimal. But we have had, in Brian, in your past, how many, like maybe 5 or 6 total uproars of something?
Yeah.
I mean-
Maybe, you know, 5 or 6 is probably rounding up, right? I mean, we've
I can
had,
think of a couple. Yeah.
yeah, big instances where, you know, sewer problems in like 2016,
Right.
the building, 2999 Dublin Grandview Road. I mean, and then,
There's
you
a
know, some
handful.
people talking about, you know, a couple of meetings about either the Fisher development that never happened or the MI development where
Correct.
people
The
thought,
basketball court.
oh, and the
court was
basketball.
one.
court. There we
So,
go. So that gets us to 5.
right.
I
So,
would
and
kind of
actually have a
point
couple
out
more that you're
that-
missing. So definitely. So again, it
I
just,
would, real quick, just
ahead.
point out on part of this, because I know there's some feeling like people not being at meetings, people not making comments is a negative. I look at that as actually as a net positive, and I'll tell you why. People, generally speaking, show up to make comments when things are bad. or
But
when
that don't
things-
mean you
that-
limit someone's
Excuse
ability.
me, can I
because you
just
don't
finish,
like a negative
please?
Comments.
That's not what I'm saying. I was gonna make a point. I'll finish making it now.
I'm looking forward to hearing. it.
When people aren't showing up and making comments, it's because what's happening is fine with them. If the streets are getting plowed, if the leaves are getting sucked up, if the sewers are working, people generally don't show up and say, hey, I just wanted to show up and say it's going great. People show up when we've failed at something, when something's
This is
broken
generally
down,
the
when
case with other
something's not
municipalities
being
as well.
done or needs to be done differently is when you get comments.
Okay, but let
But
me
you
ask you
should-
this scenario. The scenario is we're virtual. How's anybody supposed to ask a question, period? I'm just trying to get a virtual option.
They
for
can
people.
email me.
And once again, we've expressed that all of our emails are public, right?
Okay, but
All of
there's no
those
green
emails
card
are on the
option.
public record. They don't what?
There's no green card option though.
I don't even know what you mean by green card option. Tell me
If
to
it's
explain
not,
that.
if it's not live, you can't fill out a green card and make a citizen's comment.
Sure, absolutely. I agree.
So you don't
that
think
is-
that we should
is-
at least have a virtual option when we go virtual? I think
And
that's
I
ridiculous.
just explained to you how we could. I don't have any problem with that, but it needs to have the guardrails of, it's gotta be, in a room, people saying their own piece. Because
Right,
if
but
we
we
go to
also-
reading, hold on, if we go to reading all the comments on the live stream, my
no
number
one said that.
fear-
No one said
Yes,
that.
yes,
Not
yes,
one.
people have said that.
Okay,
People
but that's
have
not
said
what we're
that, and to say
proposing.
that they didn't is
That's
absolutely.
okay, that's great, but that's not an option because we're not talking about that right now. Nobody
Okay.
proposed that as an option here. What we proposed is
yes,
that
yes,
we
you
have
also
a
did. So let's
virtual
hold on,
green
hold on.
card.
Stacy, the one thing I will require is that we not revise our history. In this conversation today, people have spoken to wanting to read comments directly from the live stream. So to say that's not been part of this discussion is dishonest, and I will not allow that.
Who has said
Maybe
that?
you
You,
misunderstood.
Nikki, did.
No, not at all.
I think
not
you
at all.
misunderstood.
Yeah, you did.
I think you misunderstood.
I did not.
No.
Okay.
I'm afraid I
When we
heard the
first
same thing.
started, it was asking
what I
what
thought.
is the best way to do this. But what I do feel what we're doing is, to just avoid everybody and these negative comments, which may come in, which are going to come in, whether they're this way or this way, finding the best way to open this with not messing up the meeting, with doing it legally, finding those ramifications, with doing it the best way. However,
And
don't
I-
put words in my mouth because that's not what
I-
I said. So
I'll-
add a
I'll go back
button.
and
I
review the
agree with
video.
add a button. Do the email. Please let me finish. Adding that button, doing that. I just feel that when we sit and say, no, we're not going to do this because everybody's going to show up and no one cares, then we're not doing something right. A, if people aren't showing up unless they're coming to bitch, why don't they want to show up? That's a problem. And B, the fact that we just need to have that open communication. And whether we all decide that we don't want to do this and have it open during the meeting, so be it. But let's find a way to include those residents. That is exactly all this was supposed to be discussed about.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm
There's
gonna
just-
make a couple little quick comments. I've been here for 4 years now. So Brian's longer than me, I think. So we've done our coffee with council and no one ever showed up. If they did, it was the same 2 or 3 people every single time. I have been to at least probably, we did them every single month. We quit doing them because it was the same 2 or 3 people and that was it. The only time we ever got it is when there was an uproar of the building or the uproar of, just something like that. Nobody ever came. One night we sat there and we listened to someone talk about their neighbor's weeds. And that was the entire conversation for 1 hour, which is what they wanted to talk about. So there's nothing wrong with that, but no, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. Did
No,
anybody
I-
ever show up to those?
Very infrequently. So
Yes.
Coffee with the Council started around like 2014, right? And that was also back when council only met once a month, right? We had one regular council meeting a month, and on another Monday in the month, there was Coffee with the Council. And we had a rotating schedule of who brought the treats and all of that. It was, in general, very poorly attended. If there were 10 people showed up, more than twice, I'm again rounding up, right? I am not opposed to this forum. I always kind of liked it. It was always interesting when someone would show up that you'd never seen before, and you're like, what is this person doing? I love meeting new people, right? I thought I knew everybody who lived in this village, only to find out, we had people stagger in because they saw the sign outside, Coffee with the Council. What is this all about? They have no idea, right? And that's always fine. However, is it a great use of our time? Probably not, right? So a quarterly Coffee with the Council, I'm down for that. I'm down for a monthly one until people change their mind, right? I'll show up.
And I'm going to agree with Brian on that. I think it's all or nothing though, because here's what I'm
Yeah.
going to say, and I'm only going to say this because of the past, not of this group. You can't say a couple council people show up and then all of a sudden, you 2 are the only ones that show up.
Right.
It's either all or nothing, because I think if you're going to do Coffee with Council, you can't have 3 members not interested, and again, I'm not throwing stones, Mark, or anybody, if it's coffee with council, it's coffee with council. It's not coffee with 2 council or coffee with 3 council, or somebody's always going to be on vacation. There's always going to be somebody sick. That's fine. But I don't think it being an optional thing is a good idea either, because then you're going to find that maybe not this group, but again, you got to do it all or nothing.
At the very least, you need a schedule, because if
Right,
it's just whoever can show up tonight, you will eventually have a situation where nobody shows up. And that's really
And the
embarrassing.
next part is that going to be virtual? How do you get the message out there? Because not everybody's on, not everybody has. You're going to have to put it in the newsletter. You're going to have to do all of that kind of stuff, because again, a newsletter does hit a lot of our residents that are not Facebook people. I will tell you again, being in my position, you get a lot more. I think a lot of people feel like residents don't have a way to communicate, and we're all worried about that. Oh, let me explain something to you. When they have something to say, they communicate to me. I probably had at least 10 people reach out to me about the lawn service. I have had people reach out to me about the snow plowing already. I've had people, just because they're not communicating with you and they're not coming, I promise you, do a records request for my emails. Residents know they can reach out. Residents have the contact me tab on the website. They use it. Ask Barb. There are people that use it. There are people that contact Eric every single day. Eric will vouch for how many people reach out to me via email about the dog going poo-poo in their neighbor's yard, the dog going poo-poo. We get those. So where I think people feel like residents don't have a way to communicate, residents are communicating. Just because I don't tell everybody every single time, they are reaching out to Barb. They are reaching out to Eric. They are reaching out to our code enforcement officer. They are reaching out to that. The coffee with council, in my opinion, is a great thing for you guys. Maybe more people would come with a new group. That would be the other thing. So, I'm all for it. I mean, but I'm telling you.
One quick add-on, just so everyone's clear. So municipalities around Central Ohio and the state in general have spent, bigger than us, have spent a significant amount of money and time trying to answer your question over the last couple of decades. And what they found through a lot of taxpayer studies and, on the public side, university as well, they found very much what has been said in this meeting already, I think by Councilman Bruger, that the majority of people are not showing up unless they're unhappy about something. Generally speaking, if the status quo is held and people aren't showing up to meetings, you as elected officials are doing a fine job. People are getting their services, people's money's being used properly. People are generally happy with that, of how things are going. And again, we can jump back, and I think it's a good idea to spend a little time and money over the next year, perhaps, to validate those. And we can put another survey out and follow up with our survey of several years ago. Probably we should be doing this generally every 2 or 3 years on a rotation. And we had a very good sample last time. I'll tell you, since those of you don't know me, I spent the first 5 years of my public career in a study center in research over at OSU. So I'm very happy to help out and do that thing again. But I can tell you, we had a high sample size. Generally speaking, for phones, if people, if we get more than 10% in a city from a return, it's phenomenal. Here I think we broke 20% or of people here, of residents. So that's incredible. So your sample size is great here, and people like to take part. And I would just say that's something we can work through, down the line here for the next, number of months. We've got a lot on the table, folks. So, let's get through a couple things, and then we can talk about getting a survey out maybe later this year and see where your residents are.
Yeah. And the whole point, Tiffany, is to make your life easier. Like, the whole point is so that not everybody's like bombarding your email. The whole point is like, so I can take some of that load off of you, so I can take some of that load off of Barb. That's what I'm trying to achieve, is like, we're not here to make everybody's life harder. We're here to make everybody's life easier. So like, that's like, make it more accessible. Put my email out there. I don't care. I start every council meeting by saying like, hey, we're going to like publish everybody's email addresses, like in case you have questions. Like, I don't care how we do it, but the conversation of we shouldn't do it because people are going to complain about it is not constructive.
No, people are going to complain regardless, and they will figure out who to email. if there's an issue. I mean, again, it boils back down to, you guys are not doing anything different. If you guys go back and watch the videos from when I started at my first council one, and Brian will vouch for this, because I was one of those people that, and Brian kind of smacked me in the face with his comment, and I will remember it always. I don't remember exactly how he says it, but it was, we felt like I didn't always know what was going on. And then, you realize all of these issues are going on and all of that, because, I worked every day. I had kids. I was new to the neighborhood and all of that kind of stuff. I knew nothing was going on. I didn't know anything about REIT attacks for the longest time. I am that person, because why? I didn't know where to look to find the information. I honestly couldn't. I think that there's people that have no idea that there's 6 council people sitting in here, or a mayor, if you want to know my honest opinion. And I said that from day one. So not everybody cares as much as we think they care. So that's number one. And I didn't care until there was a problem. And I will say that on a public record. It is what it is. Like, I wanted to come home, watch my kids eat dinner, go to bed. I don't care what's going on over there, as long as my toilets are flushing and all of that. Like, I pay my money, I do what I want, leave me alone. That is me. That's the difference of why I'm sitting here right now. The fast forward, Brian made a very good point to me, from not just me, but everybody. And Brian, you can say it the way that you say it, but it's basically like, it doesn't matter how much you do. If people aren't willing to look in the window, there's nothing you can do.
That's
So
true.
if they're not willing to open that newsletter, they're not going to know. If they're not willing to go to our website, they're not going to know. If they don't know we have a website, how do you get the information to tell them we have a website? So, we have the text blast, and the text blast still only does so much. I mean, we've got a couple hundred people, but we've got a couple thousand people that live here. And if you really want to look at the text blast, half of those are 2 and 3 people in the same household that are getting the text blast. So you're only hitting this much of the residents. Now, people love it. But in my house, there's probably 2 or 3 people that have that text blast on their phone. So if you've only got 300 or 400 people, you're probably only hitting a couple hundred houses. We've got, that's not the point. The point is, you have to want the information in order to do it. I fought this for the first 2 years until I realized that if there's something going on, people are involved. If there's not, which is a great thing, we're trying to reach out to people that just want to be left alone. They don't want stuff on their mailboxes. They're content. They're happy.
Yeah,
So,
and Councilwoman Cost, if I may as well.
Go for it. I'm done.
One thing, and Mayor, thank you. One thing I want to point out, I realize that there's a lot of eager beaver when you get on the council and you want to go ahead and, take load, and just keep in mind that there is for things that are standardized, right? When the mayor, because of her authority as the executive, has to divvy out those things from an efficiency standpoint to the different employees, that's why generally those come in. Now, I think your mayor has the unique experience of also being, a very active chair on streets. And I think that's any of you who are chairs of those particular, committees, obviously can step in those particular responsibility areas. And I'm sure the mayor will be more than happy to make sure that things get to you, or we somehow find a way that you can take a lead role in those particular items. We just want to make sure that there's an understanding of the fine line between, if it gets to you and gets to the mayor, then she has to divvy it out, right? We have to be careful about where the routing goes from the standpoint of employee management, just because of the HR standpoints. And Jesse can obviously talk about that if necessary between council person and mayor designations, but that's an important thing to keep in mind with this stuff.
And then
Great.
just
Hold on, Mayor, Ms. Mayor, we've been on this for 40 minutes, so I think we can
I would say
move
one thing.
and then we're gonna put a bow on it, and then we're gonna move on.
Eric, just so you know, that was Nikki's number one thing, was she wanted to talk about that survey. So maybe that's just something after the meeting you guys could kind of coordinate with, because
I would be happy to. And Councilwoman, you are muted, so I didn't hear what your last comment was.
I said, that's exactly what these work sessions are for. I'm sorry, I have sessions the rest of the day, but I would love to sit down and talk to you. I hope you had something to do with this 2018 one. This information is golden that we have.
Yes.
Yes, there's been a couple renditions, and I will tell you, Councilwoman, what, and this goes to everyone out there, especially those who have already served. I will more than happily find time as part of my duties to sit down, have a coffee, have a lunch. We can go through things as necessary to assist you in your needs, right? So just you and I can schedule something and start going over stuff.
And I
no
think that would
problem.
be a great place, once again, for the number one question, because you've added 250 new houses of people that communicate in different ways, to find out how they want to be communicated with.
Yep.
Let's put coffee with council.
Agreed.
That would be a great question on there. And Brian, I just wanted to circle it back to that, and I'm done.
All right, so to hit I'd like to get, quick agreements here, and so that we have moving forward for, next steps for communications, right? So to go back to Councilperson Shresta's agenda topic, revisiting coffee with the council, I think you get a quick agreement that quarterly is fine. And so Councilperson Shrestha, if you can work with administration to find the right date for the first one and socialize that date, and I think we can certainly move forward with that. Virtual green card discussion. I think the way I would like to see it is the committee come up with a recommendation, right? This is how the communications committee recommends we do this thing, right? The committee then brings that recommendation to this body, who then either agrees or disagrees, right? And then in that disagreement, we can make amendments as a body or not, right? I know I made my own suggestion, but certainly make however, and we can move forward. Yes, Mayor Hughes, you have your hand up.
Yeah,
Away.
I have two questions as we're on that topic, and we're not going backwards.
Okay.
What is everybody wanting to do moving forward as far as these meetings virtually? And how is that going to affect coffee with council? If you guys are wanting to do coffee with council, I would prefer not to have a coffee with council in person, and we're not willing to meet virtually for this. So I'm just, again, I'm trying to.
Are we
I
discussing
think it's a really
going-
good point.
Are
So
we
That's
discussing
yeah,
going
that's a
back
great
to
point.
virtual?
I am, everybody knows
I-
I want to be in person, but Mark, that's
Yeah.
the question.
Okay, we
All
can,
right,
we
I
can
hadn't
park
heard that
because that is a
question.
bigger. Yeah, I heard your question and I'll restate it. So yes, Mark, the state has re-allowed us to go back to virtual meetings for our business meetings, right? So we can, if we choose, to go back to virtual for our 2 regularly scheduled council meetings.
Yeah,
of the month.
I just hadn't heard that brought up by anyone in our organization as something
It
to
was-
do.
It was asked if it was possible. We never got around to, is that what we want?
Okay.
So do we want to deal with
Just
that
thought I'd
right,
missed something.
I
right
think-
here and now?
Sure. We talked about this already in the communications thing, and what we talked about is just maybe doing it for an hour after like a Saturday planning session, like on Zoom. Just let more people in right after this, and then you're good.
BYOC, bring your own coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean a coffee with the council immediately after? I would. Yeah. I
Or
mean,
maybe
that's-
we ask what day is
certainly
best in this survey? What day would you show up? Not only would you show up, but what day would you want to show up?
Who wants to have coffee on a Thursday night, like before bed? That doesn't make sense to
It's
me.
never actually about the coffee.
I don't
Um,
drink coffee
Like
for what it's
cocktails
worth.
with council.
Yeah,
Give
that's
her a
fine
phone
too.
call.
Nikki, my recollection, because I was on council when we did that survey the last time, it was like a 5-month process to do that survey. So if you're looking for an answer for this quarter's coffee with the council, that survey is not going to be helpful, right?
Maybe for next
Especially if
year.
we are just kicking off that process now, it is going to take us time to develop that survey. It's going to take us time to administer that survey, and then it'll take us time to tabulate and, glean information from it, right? So if we're looking for an answer for today, I think we need to come up with an answer for today. So again, so first question is the first question. Do we want for Thursday to have our meeting virtual or in person? I will speak my own piece, and I would say that I would prefer virtual. But
Agreed.
I would second that as well.
Yeah.
all right, so that's 3 councilperson costs.
Yeah.
Yes, virtual.
Yeah.
Councilperson camera.
I'm fine with in person.
Okay, Councilperson Berger.
I'm also gonna take the camera cop out there and say I'm fine with in person, but since it already looks like we have 4 people
It sounds
saying let's
like
be
4.
virtual, I'm
Four
not
for
like,
virtual.
I'm not fighting for in-person, but
Yeah, 2 that I'm counting as abstains, right? So it sounds to me like we should plan to be virtual. So what I would suggest for a coffee with council is we should look, or whatever we want to call that public forum. A, communications committee, you're welcome to workshop whatever names you like. And B, a different technology solution, right? Or we spin up a Zoom meeting on a day different than a council meeting and make the URL public, and that's what it is.
Now, I do have a quick question, guys. I know you want to move on. Is there anything wrong with me making a post and asking our residents, hey, we're thinking of really revisiting Coffee with Council, just informal? What do you guys think? This, and that. Is what
There's nothing wrong
legally,
with
am I
that.
allowed to do that? Am I allowed to? I just didn't know.
You're allowed to do it. Don't forget you're doing it on the MPCA page.
Correct.
So as long as they're okay with that, because we try to be respectful. And then the only other thing that I say about that is it's a lot of people on there. However, you're not hitting your people that I feel like a lot of us really are trying to hit. So your people that aren't on social media aren't going to be able to answer that. And again, we have 800, there's like 800 people on that page. But again, 2 or 3 people from each household, kids are on there. And there are people that have gotten through on the MPCA page that aren't even residents. So, again, you're only hitting that small percentage of people, and you're only hitting those social media people. You're not hitting those people that are sitting at home that don't do that. And I mean, I have names in my mind that they come into the office, like they come in and ask questions. And the first things that they say is, we don't do social media. We don't.
That's why Zoom would be.
Yeah. So, but again, it's how do you get that link to that particular person?
Your better
Newsletter.
planning point may be to put it in the newsletter with your public link
Yes.
for the next month,
Newsletter
and that
is-
way everybody gets it.
It's true.
Yeah, why don't we just do a Survey Monkey link and then just like literally like old school, type it out and then whoever wants to
Two
type it
things.
out.
Yes, yeah, if that's the way you want to go, but I think, because are we talking about getting the notice out for the virtual coffee with council, right? And that's where I'm just saying, put your Zoom link into your newsletter, announce for a date next month, and that's how you get that out. The Survey Monkey thing is going to take, we will use a type of Survey Monkey, we will use a instrument, but we have to go through a process to do a proper instrument, right? A proper survey and questionnaire. It's going to take time. It's flash stuff is not good for what we want to use for. So that's why it's a multi-month process.
Well, what I'm saying is, why can't we just do an informal one? Hey, do you want to have coffee with council? Hey, okay, if you do, what day works for you? Monday,
So how-
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
How
Saturday.
will you address, again, the question I've gotten, this is just from a researcher standpoint, how will you get it to all the households? You will still have to put it in the
in this-
newsletter
Put it in
and
the
put
newsletter.
a link there. And
Yep.
then maybe people see it, maybe not. When we did, just keep in mind, in order to get households to respond,
We're not
put-
trying to gather every household. We're just trying to get at
Okay.
least some information. It doesn't have to be complete information.
you want to do a flash monkey, if that's how people want to do it, and I let you coordinate with the mayor on that.
But it doesn't, this one I think should be an informal survey. It doesn't have to be like a formal, like statistical analysis of every household. I think it should be like, hey, do you want to have coffee with council? Yes or no? Like, it doesn't have to be, this one doesn't have to be that like formal thought out process. What I'm saying is like, let's just take a quick survey, an intro survey while we're working on all this other stuff and just say like, hey, do you even want to do this?
Here's the thing, it's
That's
not
it.
gonna hurt to do it. I mean, you're either gonna get responses or you're not, or
Right.
you're, I mean, I've seen surveys done on MPCA page and they turn crazy and have fun.
There's a difference between information and good information. And the less rigorous we are about how we collect that information, the lower the quality of that information is. So if we already know that it is a small subset of people who are engaged in the methods of communication that we already have, and then we expect that even fewer people will actually respond to that method of communication, we are begging for the worst kind of information. But
And I would say, if you want people to show up, you just put the Zoom link, and the people who show up, show up. It's the
I
same,
mean, that's a point.
same advertisement.
The only other thing that I would suggest is if you're gonna do like a survey type thing, have an A option and a B option and not an other option, because you're gonna get every other option that you can possibly think under the sun and moon. So if you were really thinking, what about Saturday or what about Monday at 6 or Saturday at 10, those would be these are our two options. Like, don't leave it open because everybody's gonna be like, well, Tuesday at 3. So and that does you no good, because you know that's not gonna happen. So getting an A option and a B option, and see which one wins.
I mean, that's a
I would
valid.
just say real quick, because I'm fine. I like, and because it was about the building and something that is on the horizon that people are having interest in. The last one we did, which was over the progress we're making on the community center, was well attended. Because when you have something to report, people will show up to hear about it.
Right.
I would opt for, excuse me, and I brought this up in communications committee, doing it, on the Thursday night that we don't have council. If nothing else is, Mayor Hughes said it's important that all council members are there. Council members have said Thursday nights are available, and that keeps it like, oh, Thursday night is when, if you want to see the council, if you want to go to the meeting, if you want to go to that meeting, it gives one day, one time frame for people to remember. The Saturday after work session, I mean, hey, I'm already up, I'm already here, I could stay for an extra hour. The problem you run into with that is sometimes, not often, sometimes we finished up by 9:30, sometimes it's not till 10:30. You don't really have a hard end time. So when you're saying after work session's over, you're either then going to establish a hard end time. Work session has to go until this point. It can't go longer, it can't go shorter. And I'm not sure our work session, in theory, we want to, be here and do the work until we've done the work. And if there's not a lot of work and we can all be done at 9:30, great. If there is a lot of work and we go to 10:30, well, there's a lot of work. What are you going to do? So that was my biggest concern with trying it, Saturday after the work session.
Let's do 8 a.m. on Saturday, start first, 8 to 9, 8:45. You have your coffee, you get riled up, and then you go to work. I don't know, get all jittery. So why can't we have it beforehand? So then it's a set time. That would solve everybody's problem.
And so I'm here. I am officially putting this back in the hands of the communications committee, right? Please have your discussion, bring a recommendation, and then this body can either adopt or not adopt that recommendation. Okay? Because that is, in my opinion, what the committees are for, is to formulate recommendations for this body. And we got questions, which are great, and questions bring discussion, which is also great. But we've had lots of discussion now. Now we need, in my opinion, we need the communications committee to have a recommendation that we can adopt.
And I would say between the Saturday and between the Thursday, whatever you guys think is best. And I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in Thursday.
Quick
I think Saturday's
update.
great to try to do it.
Quick
Mhm.
update from my end. I was looking at the House Bill 51, and the governor has not signed it yet. That is legislation that allows us to go virtual. So if he signs it between now and Thursday, we could go virtual. But if not, we have to have in person.
All right, well,
My guess
yeah.
is it'll work for the second meeting in February.
Well,
Yeah.
my opinion is it's too late to turn it. I'm glad that actually has happened, and I'm just gonna say it because we already have a meeting earlier Thursday with John coming in to talk about the pool fees and all that kind of stuff. And then I just think it's short notice. I think if we're trying to be transparent, but in person is still the way to go. And, I understand that there's COVID. I understand that you can wear a mask. I understand, there's not a lot of people that come in there, but it gives people the opportunity to come in there. Now we aren't set to do virtual cards. We aren't set to do any of that kind of stuff. And now we're basically going right back to nobody can communicate because you're not going to get that information out in 4 days.
Yeah.
So I think that you're doing exactly the opposite of everything you're trying to do by going virtual this Thursday. I'm not saying, giving a little bit of time, but getting the message out there, I don't think in 4 days is the smartest thing to do. It looks like you're trying to hide from people for some reason.
Yeah, you have a good point.
Okay, so again, trying to move on. Confirmation of subcommittee reports. I think that can all committee chairs at least at this point, agree to submit meeting minutes to be published to the website? Yes, Nikki.
You're muted.
I'm like this. I'm like, is everybody gonna do it? No, I'm just following
Yeah.
along with you, Mr. Wolf.
Yeah,
That's all.
everybody's okay with submitting meeting minutes going forward?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
hearing- Okay, done, written minutes. We will let the communications committee begin working with Eric Fisher regarding a survey project. All right, I think that gets us to the end of communications, finance, that's me. I know myself, Eric, and the mayor, or Mayor, you weren't there because you were wherever you were. But also representatives from Frost Brown Todd and a banker from
KeyBank.
KeyBank.
Key met again regarding financing against future TIF revenues. We again discussed a little bit more about that methodology using the finance authority or the port authority as sort of the magic, the secret sauce in there. We also discussed one of the biggest potential possible savings is entering into a negotiation with MI to accept a net present value for the money that is still owed them. We've
Give
done
an
some.
update on that when you're ready to.
Oh, we do? Okay. And we apparently we have an update. So that's like the most important thing I have to hear today. What do you know, Eric?
I did have a brief conversation yesterday with MI. It is not a no. It is going to be, so it is a maybe. Craft what you want to do into communication to an email and copy this person and myself, and we will get it up the chain. So.
Okay. So I mean, that's, hold on. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. So it's not a, yeah.
It was
Okay.
it wasn't poorly received. It was like, yeah, that's possible. It's kind of like that.
Possible sound is better than unlikely, but waste your time. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
good. I like the sound of it. Okay, so that is good. And that's, so the next steps, once we, yes, Mr. Bruger.
So are we saying that, because I'm pretty sure I'm aware of what the plan would be with the TIF and borrowing against it and then paying off MI and then, and et cetera, et cetera. So is what am I hearing in that last 30 seconds, like MI could possibly say like, oh, you guys want to do that? No, we don't want you to do that.
No,
and
no,
prevent
they
us.
can't do that. So here's the thing, right? Based on our current TIF agreement, in dollars, we still owe MI about $3.1 million, right? And they get the first of that money as it rolls in. Well, as the money's rolling in, it's going to take us about 7 more years to pay that off, right? So money today is worth more than money in 7 years. So you can calculate what the net present value is of that. And what we are hoping to do is take that, calculate a fair net present value and say, hey, MI, you can wait 7 years to get your $3.1 million, or we will give you this pot of gold today. And as long as they, in fact, agree that this pot of gold is worth as much as $3.1 million over the next 7 years, then we're golden. And it could save us a couple $100,000.
Did you guys?
We're looking at, we're trying to get them to agree to the lottery payout. You can have all of it
yeah.
over 20 years or
Exactly.
less of it if we
Exactly.
give it to you in a big bag of cash.
The discount isn't quite as good as that, but
Yeah.
it's something.
The discount.
Okay,
Matthew?
that makes sense. Thanks for the clarification.
Eric, did you and Brian, did you guys get my email from him yesterday? Because I found that some of my emails went through and some of them came through blank.
From Tim.
Who's him?
Who's him? KeyBank or David.
I'll have to look in there. I don't remember
I got
seeing it.
an email from David about that's the letter of
Oh no,
intent.
yeah, you guys should have all gotten it.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
got
This
that.
isn't the
Yeah,
one.
so
The
Eric,
2.3 to 2.8,
you should be in receipt of
I have that.
a good ranged for that net present value to
Oh, good.
continue
Okay.
that.
I got it. I
Yep.
was
I'll-
thinking
I'll-
for some reason I got something that I forwarded. I'll have to look and see what I sent you guys yesterday.
Okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, essentially for all the council members, we owe, the number we owe MI at this point is $3.157 million. Okay, no matter what. That's after our last payment. So what we would do is, depending on what, that's our maximum value that we have to pay out to MI, right? If MI is agreeable, it will come down some value. Somewhere, I would guess from our discussion, somewhere between 2.6 and 3.157. And that's depending on how MI views its investments, its interest rates, where they would put the money, all that good stuff. So that's why we have to have a discussion. It could be 2.8, it could be 2.7, it could be 2.9. Nonetheless, it's a valuable conversation because it may gift us a few $100,000 extra dollars, which is always good money. And then what happens is we would tack whatever dollar that is onto all of the other items that we're looking to do and wrap that up in an instrument. And the process is the Port Authority then bundles that, we sell it to the open market from a bond standpoint, and we've got our money basically, and then we write MI a check, and then we have money to fund our various large projects, i.e. the building and the lake for sure.
And then building, lakes, and then potentially some additional money for other infrastructure like pathways. That's what we're aiming at.
Wonderful.
And that is Finance Committee. So,
Oh, there was another one.
oh, yeah, go ahead.
Did you want to talk about the fire yet or no?
Oh, well, I guess that that actually hasn't been
Fully
discussed
gutted.
in the Finance Committee meeting yet, but
Got it.
we are aware, as as the chair of Finance Committee, Columbus Fire has approached us with a new contract, part of which includes fire inspection of our commercial properties and inspection of our hydrants. And those have been added in because it was determined that we were not adequately conducting our fire inspection of our commercial properties. So we should probably, Councilperson McNamara, you are chair of safety. So I
Yes,
think
sir.
you could probably get that contract as well. I don't know. if
Yes,
you-
I did. I saw it.
Okay.
Or I saw the
Uh,
synopsis from the mayor.
That's
Yep.
what I sent out. I knew I sent something
Got it.
out.
Yep, I got that.
So,
Yeah, it seems that, they're the only game in town, I suppose. So
right. So yeah, we just need to make certain that those committees are, and so that'll be part of our discussion this month with finance, is just ensuring we know where that money's coming from. But as it sits right now, where did it go? All in, it was like 235,000-ish.
Yeah.
For all of
Under,
it.
it was under 240. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, whoa. Why did it go? Huh?
So
I'm
if I may,
fairly
Mayor and Councilman, so you had your base amount, which was, I think, 175, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly. You had 10,000 then added to that, if I'm remembering again correctly, for the hydrants each year, where Columbus does the full inspections and everything of the hydrants. 30,000 is then added in for all of the commercial inspections of all 85 properties that we have that are commercial or institutional, including our own, that are required by our original contract. And that's an issue of liability and fireman safety. And it's something that really has to be done once a year. And we're not hiring staff, and we don't have anyone to do that work correctly. So that's how it all gets added together. And just in brief, as we go through this process, we obviously there's a levy discussion, and there's also permitting, which we can do of the to claw back that money from the commercial users on a once a year basis. So I'm fairly confident we can claw back the 30 without any problem.
Okay, so did somebody say it's 235 or 205?
220, no, 224. I misremembered the number. So 224, I'm looking at the document now, is the total number.
Okay.
And the other part was that we had in our original contract tied increases to the base rate to increases in Columbus Fire's operational budget. And they had a 5% increase in their operational budget, which gets them a 5% increase on the base rate.
Yes.
So just for council to understand, this is a huge jump.
Uh,
That's
significant.
Yeah, it is a large jump, but most of that large jump has to do with statutory requirements that we were not previously fulfilling.
Correct.
And, oh,
There
no,
is a-
understand this, I'm saying that it is a huge jump for budgetary purposes, but it is a needed jump. We're not following safety guidelines. I mean, let's just be honest,
Yeah.
the person that we did have, and this is gonna go to safety, so I'll just be real quick. The person that we had that was doing some of the inspections has retired. That person was also not necessarily advised over the last 20 years that they were supposed to even be, or maybe they did some, I don't know, but we
It was
don't. believe
on,
that
it was
a lot
on
of that-
call, Mayor, as
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it was as needed. That is not, these things should be done every single year.
For every
And
space.
they are not. So
Yep.
this is something that I don't want to say, we've been very fortunate that we've not had any issues.
That's
So,
concerning.
yes, Councilperson Cost, you have your hand up.
Okay, so questions. If say a business hypothetically gets fined for not being up to code or whatever, what happens? Do they get a fine, like a monetary fine? Where does that money go? Do they just get
So-
cited? Like what happens?
Here's how it works. So just like we have a mayor's court for a zoning enforcement action, and then we take someone to environmental court beyond that, there is a process for enforcement of the fire code. You as council will adopt how that is happening. And what I mean by that is the code that's adopted will probably be at some later point Columbus's fire code, because then those guys will be your enforcement actions. So they will take the people through the process that they need to get people to do what they're supposed to do, right? And that process is separate of anything we'll have to deal with, which is also nice.
Okay, but like, I guess, do we need to budget any time and or money for the rest of
Just the
that?
30,000 additional, that's why I know no one's happy with an increase, but running a fire department full-time costs a lot of money, and that's not a bad, the overall, it's not a bad deal compared to what full budget numbers are, and they're gonna do all of that administrative process. We don't have to touch it. We don't have to involve ourselves. They've got people that know what they're doing and do the actions. We don't.
Okay,
And I think there'll be a larger discussion once we get into the safety. Eric and I have already talked about permitting options and trying to recoup some of that money. As soon as they walk out the door, we kind of started brainstorming, like, what can we do to get this $30,000 down?
Do we want that permitting discussion in safety, or where do we want that permitting discussion?
I mean, I think we're gonna talk about just in general, the safety of what, I mean, I think the first person that's gonna ask the question, and I'm just gonna throw it out here, and I know we're at 9:09, but why can't we just hire a third party? And the reason that we don't want to hire a
30,000.
third party is because then you take everything internally, you're gonna hire a third party, then you're gonna have to hire another employee. We already did, I don't want to say we did all of this, because you guys are more than welcome to do it.
Or-
But I think that there's gonna be, people are gonna want to know why we didn't explore other options, and we've already explored those other
Yes.
options.
So
So all I'm asking is, because I'd like to move
Finance.
this out of this meeting now.
Correct.
So,
because it's a fee schedule item, Brian, I would like
Yeah.
to have that discussion in finance personally. I mean, safety, I think, David, and speak up if you would rather have a monetary discussion there as well too. I'm happy to present to both, but
Yeah, I think, it wouldn't hurt anything.
maybe it's worth having a joint finance safety meeting, since I'm on both
yep, that's a good
anyway.
idea.
So
Yeah.
Great idea.
why don't we'll work to get that scheduled soon. All right, moving along to streets. Anything to report from streets?
so basically what I reported last time, I was contacted by somebody who has an asphalt company asking about needed repairs. I touched base with maintenance and they said it didn't seem that way. And basically, we're just going to wait for that report to see what the condition of the pavement is before I touch base with anybody, because it doesn't really make sense considering it's like the dead of winter and we're just going to have more potholes later.
As
good.
of right now, we do have our maintenance person just doing cold patch and things like that. So if anybody is aware of any, and I already talked to Stacy about this, if anybody is aware of a pothole around their house or they see one or whatever, you can reach out to our maintenance person, Brian. You can reach out to Stacy. You can reach out to me, all of the above. But we're trying to do those in-house at this point in time until we can.
Yeah.
Great. Community committee, Councilperson Camera.
We have our first meeting on Thursday, so nothing to report yet.
We are excited to hear about that in the future.
Yes.
Councilperson McNamara, Safety Committee.
Yes, so I gave a little brief summary at the last council meeting. We talked about staffing, which is improving. They're going to be losing one, but they've got a couple people they're looking into. We really dodged a bullet by agreeing to get that cruiser early last year. We really dodged a bullet because we're actually going to be able to get it replaced. Like I said, emerging issues, we knock on wood, do not see any at the moment. It seems that the largest thing we're going to be talking about at the next meeting will be our joint finance safety meeting, talking about the, I guess you'd say, remediation of our fire service in the community, or are you fire control service in the community? Other than that, I believe I disseminated information as effectively as we can for the moments we're in.
Good. Councilperson Bruger. For legislative.
There we go. I was just grabbing my mute button there. Yeah, we had our legislative meeting before the last regular council session. Other than routine things coming up like the, entering into contracts and revising that, the only thing that we're really looking at and discussing is the sign ordinance. Which, did we come to a conclusion on flags and a way to
No, I
either
have to get
carve
with
them
Jesse.
out?
We've had a couple things going on, but before our next legislation meeting, I'm gonna get with Jesse. We'll propose some language on how official national flags are handled in the code, and we'll get something back in front of you here.
And for those of you unfamiliar who weren't at that meeting, if read a certain way, the proposed signage code, which actually just for anyone listening, is a much more, I would say, maybe generous or liberal view on what sign you can put in your front yard than the original 1989 code. A lot of that's because the Supreme Court came down since 1989 saying you can't tell people they can't put signs in their yard. But on that, we have like the signs have to be a certain size, no bigger than like 1x2 or 2x3, something like that. And then it's unclear whether that would consider flags as signs too. And we want to make sure that, my 3x5 flag I have hanging outside my house isn't in violation. Speaking of the 89 code and what I have up on my other screen, did everyone take a look at the Frost Brown Todd code rewrite proposal?
Yeah.
Comes to pretty much what we were told, no more than 35,000. They'll do some, run some surveys, get some feedback, show up to meetings. Again, just for anyone who's unsure why we're rewriting our code was the code we operate under was adopted in 1989. I wasn't at any of those meetings, but I imagine a lot of it was just grabbing other cities' code, slamming it into a binder and saying, there, that works. That didn't take into account sort of the uniqueness of our village. And by that, I mean, the fact that we've had houses being built here since 19 whatever to 2021 when the last house was built. And then there's also there have been, like we're talking about the sign code. Our old sign code used to be like, you can't have religious signs or holiday signs up for more than a month. Well, you can't regulate that anymore. Back in '89, that was fine, and you were allowed to police your own neighborhood or village and say, you can't do this. And that's the need for it. And did we already pass the legislation for us to go into that, or did we just do a reading?
And for what? I'm sorry.
Which one?
I know we had, and I should know this on legislative chair, but yeah, did we approve entering into the contract?
No, this is the first
Yeah,
time you're seeing this.
Yeah,
And I think,
This is the first.
Yeah,
But
Jesse,
sometimes we read things in when we don't have the contract in our hands yet.
yeah, since
to get
you,
it going.
since you already have a contract with Frost Brown Todd, you don't, Jesse, can you update him on how that would work?
Yeah, you've already contracted with us as an entity, so the only thing to do would be to appropriate the up to the 35,000 for this separate project, so we can get a quick resolution together for you to do that. It's just basically moving money.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing I want to,
Have Leah and or Kim opined on whether we have this money?
so I will say that, when's your next finance committee?
We haven't scheduled it yet, but
I would
we-
schedule one because we've obviously got a couple of things. This is, I know Kim and Leah would like to talk about it. And we do have to discuss the money based on Columbus Fire as well as this.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I think it's doable. I will want to point out for council's information that Jesse and I talked, and although we did get a price from Frost Brown Todd's bean counters of 35, based on our knowledge of our code and our, we're not Dublin or Columbus, we feel the number is going to be closer to 20. So although the not to exceed will be 35, we don't see us spending that kind of money. And I think Councilwoman Cost, you had asked me a few questions via email, and I think I'm happy to expound on those, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to get, just outright cut.
Mhm.
There's building code we don't need anymore. I mean, there's things that we just have to point things properly. And I mean, we have to match up we probably are going to adopt a couple other zones. I think when they adopted that R3 code for the whole classic neighborhood, as an example, that was strictly someone driving down Minerva Park Road, not anywhere else, right? And so I think we'll adopt based on our plot sizes. We'll even everything up. And between myself and Jesse, I just would have a hard time seeing us eat up something beyond 20. Could happen, but not likely.
Yeah, and to answer that question, yes, there's money to do lots of different things, and we have money in different funds and all of that kind of stuff. We have 3 really large things that we've discussed just today that were not accounted for in the previous budget. So, I mean, it's going to be a discussion with Kim. She may tell us we need to prioritize. She may say they're all fine, but a survey is going to cost upwards of probably $10,000-$15,000. Then you're talking about another $20,000, and then we're almost talking about an additional $50,000 in the fire. That's not something that most people can do at a shake of a stick. So Kim will give recommendations as to prioritizing certain things, or we have money here for this, so yes, we can use it from this fund, and she'll help us coordinate the best way to do it. The best way to do it.
I was only asking if they had already had this and had opined on it, but they have not. So
No, yes, they are aware.
Okay.
We've had these discussions with them, but not to the point of running numbers and where we're getting the money from. And that will be something that she'll bring to us. The best way to handle it to get these projects done.
Got it. Okay. Yeah,
And
that's-
oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
That's pretty much legislation for right now.
Oh, you faded out there, Mark.
Oh, that's pretty much legislation for right now.
All right. Then does anybody have any old business that they wanted to bring up now or prepare this body for discussion on Monday or Thursday, pardon me?
I have one question.
Oh,
Go ahead. No, you go.
okay. The meeting minutes will need amended as the attendance list includes, I believe, a couple people, but Councilperson Benedetti as well. I think it may be the old template or something carried
Okay.
over some.
I'll have her check that right now. I'll send an email.
Yeah.
Any other old business? Mayor, you were about to say something?
I was just making sure, Eric, if you have any legislation that, again, if we want to talk about it Monday, I will be there Monday. So if we want to talk about, possible first readings for some of these things, surveys or anything like that, if we want to even, I don't know that we're at that point for anybody. Because I know we want to do the 3 readings. So, I mean, that's just something maybe, if you guys have thoughts, or just wait until we have a couple more meetings.
Yeah,
That's
the
up to
only
you
one,
guys.
the only one I would say that we would need, and again, I just go back to what Jesse said, if we need to have a resolution to enter into that agreement for the appropriation for the 35,000, I would say, start that process. If we're going to do 3 readings, start that process now.
We can
That was all
start
my
that.
thought was.
Yeah.
And then that way we have time to meet with Kim, and if she decides that that's not a good use of money right now, then we just won't pass it.
After finance
So,
committee, yes.
yeah, I know we like the 3 readings. I know we don't want to pass things as an emergency. So again, If anybody wants to start discussing, let's get legislation for this, let me know. And then we can start at least getting first readings out for certain things. That way we're not rushing.
The council meeting is on Thursday. I know, I would say I am of the opinion that we could have first readings on both the agreement and the appropriation for the code rewrite agreement, right? Because then we can go through our 3 reading process,
Mhm.
right? And, we would have to, I think we would have to pass the agreement as an emergency, and the appropriation wouldn't need to be an emergency, just so that way we can get going in a month and a half and not 2.5 months.
Correct.
My last piece of old business would be the whole flag thing. I hope I really didn't, throw off the timeline of progress. I just really wanted to make sure we didn't end up, litigated later if somebody, catches the discrepancy of flag stuff. I just really wanted to make sure we got that squared away.
It was a good catch.
Exactly what needs to happen so that years from now, people aren't scratching their head saying like, boy, I wish those knuckleheads back in 2022 would have had more clear language. So we're not sitting around going, well, what do you think they meant? That's why it takes a little bit of time for this stuff.
Well, I'm kind of a vexillology or vexillology, whatever it's called, the study of flags nerd. I don't know. To me, a 3x5 is always the standard, and I know that's been the metric for some time. So I just want to make sure we were.
Worked for me. All right. Anybody have new business they were looking to bring to the body today? Going once, going twice. All right. Well then, here we are at the end of the meeting. I think we have had a delightful work session today. Unless anybody else has something that they are dying to tell us, I think we can all get about our Saturday.
Awesome. I'll see
All
you
right,
guys on, okay, wait, what time's communication or community? Are we 6 or 6:30? 6:15.
Yep,
6:15. What day? Is that Thursday as well?
Thursday before the meeting.
Perfect.
All right. Everybody have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.